You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic bootcamp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movo University, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 54 of Chiro Hustle. I'm your co-host Luke Millette, and here's your host, Jim Chester.
So today we had the privilege of interviewing Galen Nuttall, and he is based in Canada, and he is a financial advisor for all the Canadian chiropractors out there. Just listen to this episode and get your takeaways. So Galen, what influenced you to become a financial advisor, and what makes you unique in the chiropractic world?
Sure. So as far as becoming a financial advisor, my background is actually education, and my wife and I moved to Ontario 8 years ago with 9 suitcases and a 2-year-old, and started our lives over, basically. And a friend of mine, so teaching jobs were very hard to find, and a friend of mine who was an advisor encouraged me to look at becoming an advisor. And initially I was not interested at all. Just was afraid of having to be really salesy, or I was afraid of, helping other people manage their money. Like, I didn't want to be on the hook for big issues around that. But after a while, we kept talking, and I felt really intrigued by how I'd be able to help other people and get my own finances in order, because up to that point, my financial knowledge was basically based on me going to my dentist office, and there'd be a money magazine kind of lying around. I'd pick it up, I'd read an article, I'd take some action based on that, and then the next time I went, there'd be a different article telling me to do something else. And so I just ended up with kind of this mishmash of stuff, but not a real plan and not a real understanding of the big idea. And that's another reason why I became an advisor, was to kind of get my own house in order. I was like, what better way to do it than to become an expert?
So what's some general financial advice you could give to our listeners that could pretty much help any chiropractor out there that might need the help?
Yeah, so what I'd say is one of the issues I find is that people don't have clearly defined goals when it comes to where they want to be 10, 20, 30, 40 years out. And I find that, so that would be one of the first things is like, I'm a big believer in sitting down with someone who's an expert, someone like me, to say, okay, let's look at your goals. And then what I help people do is work backwards to what do they need to be doing today such that they'll be able to reach their goals. So just as an example, if I'm sitting down with someone who's practicing, they're in their 40s, and they say, Galen, by the time I'm in my 60s, I want to have the flexibility to slow down or to stop. That we figure out how much cash flow they're going to need at that time, work our way backwards, and figure out what they need to be doing now to get there. And the biggest thing I find with chiropractors is they have access to a corporation, like a business corporation, where, one of the things I say to them is when I meet people is I say, do you know if your corporation is acting like a sail that's moving your financial ship forward, or is it an anchor that's slowing it down? Because I've seen it work both ways. So when it comes to the money coming into the corporation, some of that has to go to the running of the business. But once people have a goal of how much they need to be setting aside to be able to someday slow down or to someday fully retire, once they have that goal, they can start working towards it. And the other thing I'll say is, a lot of people out there, they get focused on what's like not the most important thing. Like I meet people and they obsess over what investments to go into and how much the fees are and things like that. And really, when I look at the actual results of people who get to where they want to go, and there's even some studies that have shown this, where the biggest contributor to success is the behavior of the individual, like how much they're putting aside and the fact that they're not reacting to either the good times in the market or the bad times, that they're just like staying the course. Those are the people that they're most likely to be successful. And that's where a good advisor fits in. Where a lot of people think, the role of an advisor is to beat the market. Well, statistically speaking, very few can consistently, almost no one can consistently do it. Otherwise, they'd be doing something else with their lives. Like they'd be investing their own money. They'd be retired already. The real role of the advisor is to help set that goal, work towards it, save some taxes along the way, and stick to the goal, stick to the process. It's kind of like a GPS. Like, we're going to find the destination, and then we're going to figure out the route to get there, and we're going to course correct along the way.
And one of the things that I think that most people might not know about you, what makes you extra unique, is you work in the space in Canada. So tell us a little bit about, your expertise in helping Canadian chiropractors.
Yeah, so with the Canadian chiropractors, I think a lot of it's fairly similar to the States. I can't say for sure. But, with the Canadian chiropractors, I'm pretty sure it's very similar. So, the disadvantage is having, a lot of people, they're finishing their schooling. They've got a lot of debt. They're getting a late start in life. They're kind of behind the 8 ball a bit when it comes to finances. And what I find is that a lot of the financial advice out there that's been created over time, it was created by employees for other employees. So, like, I have software to help people, to help calculate things for people. And one of the first things it asks me is, what is the salary of the client? What kind of raise are they going to get every year for the next 20 years? And I basically have to toss it out because that doesn't apply directly. Because, like, one of the biggest things people ask me when I meet them is, how should I pay myself? Because they've got money going into their corporation. They don't know how they should be getting it out. They don't know how much they should be retaining behind. Sometimes they're wondering how much they should reinvest in the business. And that's where I step in and help really coordinate all that. And I am, whenever possible, I'm in touch with the accountants and the lawyers that are at the table, because they are almost, especially the accountant, is usually working in their own silo away from the advisor or whoever is doing the money management or the corporate management. And usually that's not a good thing. Like, I really see the advisor as the quarterback for the legal and the accounting and the planning, because my vision for my clients is decades long, whereas usually the accountant is only looking at 1 or 2 years in the future. They're not usually looking at 30, 40, 50 years in the future for the client.
So do you have any favorite mantras or quotes that help you with your commitment as a financial advisor?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've really been focusing on over the last year and a half is finding out how to spend more time with my ideal client. So it's people who are looking for some advice. They want someone to help guide them along the way. They want, like, a co-pilot in their financial lives. And every time I meet one and I bring one on as a client, I get this, feeling, this great sense of, oh, this is awesome, I brought on this perfect client. But immediately after that, I get this sense of, was that the last one? Like, was that the last ideal client? And so what I say to myself to keep going is, if there's one, there's 1,000. Like, if there's one person, like, every time I meet someone like that, there's another 1,000 out there that haven't met me yet or haven't known that I'm out there. And then the other thing is, I help healers heal. Like, the thing that I get really excited about is when I'm working with a chiropractor and they say to me, Galen, I sleep better at night knowing that I'm on track. Or when they say, I used to spend hours, like, poring over business, like articles and blogs, and spent hours researching. They say, I don't have to do that as much because I know that you're going to come to the table with what I need to know. And so if I can free people up to dedicate themselves to their passion, then I've done a great job. Like, that's my favorite thing in the world to hear, is when someone says to me, I've freed up some of their time, I've freed up some of their mental space, and not just to focus on their profession, but their family, their fitness, their own health. That's really, so yeah, helping healers heal. And if there's one, there's 1,000.
Yeah, that's really cool stuff. And I know our pre-interview convo, we were talking a little bit about how much of an actual struggle it is for chiropractors to keep in practice. If there's any, straight line advice to somebody that was struggling right now that's listening to this, what would it be?
Well, this is not my expertise, but I've learned more and more about the patient engagement or acquisition side of marketing. So I feel like when it comes, and I can relate to that a lot, like, as an advisor. Like, I feel like I have a lot in common with chiropractors, if I'm so bold to say, in the sense that when I walk around, I can see, like, the symptoms of people who don't have their financial lives on track, right? But people don't want to talk about it a lot of times. Like, it's almost like they're ill, but ill with a disease that's very embarrassing. Like everyone's out there with like giardia, and they don't want to admit it, And so so with chiropractors, I feel like and I've learned a lot in the last year and a half. I mean, I talked a little bit about the different chiropractic. Like it all started with Nima Rahmani, and I was working with his group, and then in the sense of like some of the work he does with professionals. And then I met Lauren Clum Phillips, who's down in California. She introduced me to Sean Dill, and then I've been following then you, and then Billy Chow, and so I've been kind of watching everything that you guys kind of talk about. And I feel like you guys, like chiropractors, in a similar space where you can see people that need your help, like actually physically see them walking around with, physical issues, but there's sort of there's not enough knowledge for people to actually reach out and say, oh, this is who I need to be talking to solve these problems. So I'm also learning for myself, okay, how can I get those people to realize what's going on and how they can be helped? And I feel like when I hear about that number of chiropractors that aren't around after 5 years, it's kind of mind blowing because they could be helping a lot of people, but they're just not connecting with the right people. So I feel like the marketing side of things, and you'd know more about that than I would, but I feel like that's probably the biggest opportunity for new chiropractor is that, because when people come out of, like when I talk to medical professionals and I say, why'd you go into medicine? I have yet to hear someone say, because I wanted to run a small business or because I wanted to be good at marketing. Like they usually say things like, I wanted to help people, or they have a story about how a chiropractor really helped them or a family member and that got them really inspired to do it. It's not because they wanted to spend their time agonizing over how they're going to get another patient.
Yeah, I get that, man. One of the things that I've become very proficient at over my short career is actually getting new patients into offices by doing creative marketing strategies, stuff that a lot of people really struggle with, and it really blows my mind. I mean, you just have to talk to people, and you have to know a system and a strategy, and you have to know how to communicate with people at a very quick level, but a very in-depth level, building rapport quickly. And I think a lot of the docs, they think that building rapport is them coming in for their first visit or their second visit. I think that that's where they consider communication as in high regard. And I think that we just had to kind of reformat the way that chiropractors think, because they are they're the person that starts the business, or the person that manages the business, and they're the person that lives in the business. So understanding the communication principles involved with the chiropractor are definitely something that's going to be able to make the profession stronger long term. And as I've gotten more involved with the profession, as you've alluded to, the profession is struggling with long-term success. And short-term is, I would say short-term's 5 years, man. And we're losing 1 out of 2 in 5 years to some type of financial hardship, going out of business. And as you said, it's just like they're walking around with this hidden symptom, which is financial subluxation. And when they have financial subluxation, they don't want to tell their friends or colleagues or their family. They don't want to come home again and talk to their wife or their husband about how many new patients that they didn't see. And they don't want to talk about the bank statements. So I think it's an internal struggle that I think that so many chiropractors need to have a healthier financial established life.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, absolutely. And it is like, it's fascinating, like to go, like if I were to go to an event full of business owners, chiropractors, and everyone says, oh, how's it going? Everyone says busy. Like everyone always says busy. No one ever says like, oh, well, you know what? I didn't hit my numbers last month, so I'm starting to worry about, how much I have saved up and whether I'm going to be able to get through the next month. Like no one ever openly says that, because you're not supposed to say those things, right? And so I go to these events and I meet people and they just say busy, busy. And I mean, even myself, like I've been more like, I made some, I wasn't doing the work of getting new clients. Like the first couple months of this year, I was on track to do really well, and I kind of slacked off in the client acquisition side of things. And now I'm feeling it, because it takes a couple months. I've heard of the 90-day rule. Like what's happening in your business today is because of the work you did or didn't do 90 days ago. And like the way that you've gotten good at that, like for you, that's now like your first, like it's kind of like a first language or a natural thing for you now. But for a lot of people, that's not natural at all. And if they haven't taken the time while they're going into practice to learn any of those things, like you're saying around communication or marketing or establishing a rapport, if they haven't spent any time on that, then it's like wow, I've got all this knowledge, I've got all these things that I can use to help people, and they're not getting in front of me. And I remember when I started as an advisor, so advisors, the failure rate is 75% don't make it past 4 years. And when I became an advisor and I was learning all this stuff, I thought, well, this is going to be easy. I can help people in such massive ways. This is going to be so easy. It's and then I start talking to people, and as soon as I say I'm a financial advisor, it's don't want to make eye contact. I went to an event recently and I was sponsoring it, and I said, I was hesitant to tell everyone in the room I'm a financial advisor, because after I say that, people don't want to make eye contact because then they're afraid I'm going to corner them and talk about, tax strategies, insurance, or investing. And so I had to kind of get over that, and the people questioning motives. I used to be a teacher. No one ever came up to me and said, "Why are you teaching my kid fractions? What's in it for you?" No one ever said that. And when I became an advisor, I had to get a little bit thick-skinned, because even some of my friends would be like, "Yeah, I'd sit down with you, Galen, but I'm afraid you're just going to try to sell me something." And it was wow, I can't believe that this is actually what people are worried about. People that actually know me think that I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to rope them into something. So it's, and so I've learned a bit more about marketing, a bit more about communication, and I'm just starting to ramp that up a bit, because I can see how in my space as well, I'm in a similar situation where the communication can help bridge that gap.
Yeah, and one of those things that you mentioned there was taxes. I know one of the things in your Chiro Hustle podcast bio, you said, "How do I save taxes?" is something that most people find important to them. I know it's probably like the elephant in the room with what you do, but how can you really help somebody with that?
Yeah, for sure. So basically, to make it simple, what I help people do is figure out, in essence, what kind of cash flow they're going to need in retirement, or when they slow down in their practice. What kind of cash flow are they going to need? And there's a misconception out there that that the only way to get cash flow is by saving up a certain amount of money. That's part of it, but another way is getting money out of the business tax efficiently. Because if I can save someone every percentage I save someone in taxes, that's money in their pocket, money that they're not losing. So basically, you've got I've got a chiropractor with a corporation. Money is coming in, they're getting taxed on that, and if they use it to run the business, they're not getting taxed as heavily as if they took it out to use it personally. I'm a chiropractor, I get paid, I then take that money out to go buy groceries. I can't say that's a business expense because I have to eat. I can't say that. But for the money that stays behind in the corporation, if a chiropractor is getting to the point where they do have more money than they need, leave it in the corporation, but then invest it tax efficiently. So there's two big strategies that, one of which I know for sure works in the States, which is there's a vehicle out there. It's been around for a very long time. It's very popular among wealthy business owners as a way to save money inside of a corporation that eventually can turn into cash flow to an individual outside of the corporation. So it's one of the best ways to get money out of a corporation tax-free. And it's a long-term strategy. It's kind of like you spend much of your working life watering the tree, and then the tree gives you shade in retirement. And the other thing is, what I help people figure out is, okay, if for whatever reason all the money stopped coming in today, how long could you survive on what you have now? How long could you maintain the cash flow you need to live the life you like, the lifestyle that you want? And a lot of people, there's a rule of thumb of you should always have 3 to 6 months. Well, eventually that number has to be, just as an example, someone retires at 60 and they live to 90, eventually that number has to be 30 years of cash flow. And what I look at is, in the early stages, people have a couple months. And I say, that's how long the wolf is at bay. The wolf that will devour me when I run out of money. And I keep, I know my numbers because this is my business, right? So I know that if something happens to me, I know how many years I could float my lifestyle before I have to start doing drastic things. And that number, I look at that number, and if it's increasing, I'm happy. If it's decreasing, I'm not happy. So eventually I have to get that wolf that's kind of chasing me to be 30 years out or even just non-existent.
So what do you think the chiropractic community would look like if more doctors went out and hired financial advisors to get their finances straight, like yourself?
Yeah. it's interesting. Like, there's a certain percentage of the population that I think is just determined to do it themselves. Like, I meet medical professionals who have their trading stocks on their computer in their free time. And, like, maybe that's not the group that would work well with me, like, if they're really dedicated to doing it themselves. But I feel like most of those people, if they were really tracking the difference between how they're spending their time, like, is that person better served trading stocks a couple hours a day or however much they do it, or are they better served working on their own business or bringing in new patients? Like, quite likely it's the bringing in the new patient, right? So, but then, like, to take it to someone who's a little bit more of a obvious fit for my practice is the person who, has their practice is going fairly well. They do have some extra money at the end of the month that's staying inside of the corporation. If they're not talking to someone like me that understands tax-efficient strategies, that money is just sitting there, and it's not working for them. And so their ability to have the freedom to make a decision to retire when they want or to slow down when they want is delayed. Their peace of mind. Like, so if people were to engage more with people who have good tax-saving strategies and retirement strategies, more peace of mind. Like, that's the biggest thing, like being freed up to really help the people that they want to help in their lives. And I mean, so I have clients who are corporate tax accountants. Like, they know all the tax stuff, but they still need to talk to someone like me to make sure that they're on track for all their goals. A lot of people don't understand that. Like, a lot of my accountants clients, my accountant will ask them, who's your advisor? And they'll say, well, you're my accountant. And they'll say, no. Like, yeah, I help you with the tax side a little bit, but I help you with the tax side, but you don't have a clear path to where you want to be money-wise. So I guess that would be the biggest thing, is people be freed up to really focus on what they care about. Their mental space would probably be, if they have that peace of mind, their mental space is clearer. And, at some point they can really make the decision to, if they keep working into their 70s, they're doing it because they love it. They're not doing it because they absolutely have to.
So the way things are going right now, where do you see the chiropractic profession in about 20 years?
Yeah. I think a big part of it hinges on just, we've touched upon it, but like really getting the communication out there of what chiropractors can do. And so, up until a year and a half ago, I didn't have very much knowledge about that. And it's only been in the last year and a half that I've really started to understand it more. And so I think about people like me who have no clue of what it's all about. There's a lot of people out there. I think that's the biggest thing, is really bridging that gap between the people out there who are symptomatic and don't know it or don't understand how much chiropractic could help them. And I think that, what I'd love to see is, like, I keep going back to that number of the people who don't make it past 5-6 years, and I think that's just brutal. Like, because after you've racked up all that debt, what do you do after 5-6 years? Like, where do you turn to now? And I'm an example of that. Like, I got a master's in education. I was all set up to be a teacher for the rest of my life, a pretty clear path, and then a few things got thrown in the way, and it just wasn't going to happen. So that's what I'd like to see, is that more of those people are getting connected to the right people to keep their practices thriving. And I think it's absolutely possible. And I really think there are marketing strategies out there that could help everyone in the service industry, everyone in the health industry.
Yeah, I think that what you said is pretty clear. We either get together and learn how to do it better as a team and strategize for a better future, or we look at, how things are kind of, evaporating. And for every it's kind of like that saying, don't die with the music inside of you. But I kind of look at it as every time that we lose a chiropractor, the profession becomes weaker. And it's like having one of our frontline soldiers going out there and doing the best that they can to heal their communities, and then they fail. And now we go into another desert where there's a void of chiropractic services. And even when they're dwindling through like year 3 through 5, where it's really probably crunch time and anxiety, they're not putting healing hands on people when they have their heart rate up because they look at their bank statements. And I think that every time that we don't have a successful, strong chiropractic system out there for chiropractors to succeed in, we have a profession full of anxiety, and then we worry about what the other person's doing down the street or around the corner or the next city over. They wonder why this one's relatively highly successful, and I'm sitting here, looking at not being able to travel home to see my family for the holidays.
Yeah, and that's that really rings true for me where, like you said, dying with the music inside, like people, if there could be a higher level of, I don't know if the word is transparency or authenticity, like where people really have a space where they can admit like what's happening and seek the help they need for the financial side or the patient acquisition side, because like you're saying, like, they're struggling, but they're not voicing it. They're not getting connected to the right people. And I think that's really true in my profession. Like I used to be the director of the branch here, and so I'd hire people and I'd train them and try to make them successful. And I knew when I was hiring them that the odds were stacked against me and them. And, I have a feel for what people are going through, but every time we got together, everyone puts on their suits, everyone's, laughing and everything. And I'm sitting there knowing that some people are standing there, same thing like you said, wondering, looking at the bank statements, wondering, what's gonna happen with their future. And it would be silence, and then someone would walk out the door. And I think that's a real detriment to have that happen. And if people could, and that happens, like, so when I sit down and talk to people, I ask some pretty probing questions about what people are up to, what's important to them. Like for me, it's a really, really important for me to see, like when it comes to the financial goals, I work a lot on why people want what they say they want. And sometimes it really, like they've thought about it and it really is what they want. But sometimes if I probe long enough, it is, well, I want to buy a bigger house or a bigger car or a better car because that's what the other guys are doing, or that's what everyone else is doing, or I have to look successful and I have to do all these things to be successful. And I will admit that I have done the same thing. Like, so, one of the things I talk about is, what's your scoreboard and whose scoreboard is it? So in the sense that society will give us all sorts of scoreboards by which to measure our success, like the size of the house, how nice is the car, what number BMW we have, all those things. But when people take the time to actually think about, is that important? Like, is that in line with their most important values? And so I'll give you an example of my life. Like, my wife and I, we left Venezuela 8 years ago. We both had decent jobs, but the country was getting fairly unstable. We left, like, we sold everything we owned. We moved to Canada with a 2-year-old and 9 suitcases, and we tried to figure out where we're going to live. My wife got a job. We bought this house, and at the time I didn't really like sit down and think about it, but we bought a house that was way bigger than what we needed. And I didn't really articulate it or even probably consciously think a lot about it, but there was this little seed in my mind that said, if I get this house, I'm proving to myself and the world that we made the right decision in leaving, or we made the right decision in moving here. And that was part of why I did it. And when I took the time later to actually like reflect on this, it's like, wow, like this decision wasn't the best financial decision, and why was I actually doing it? And to take the time to do that, like I've had people come and they say, a young person trying to get started in a big city in Canada, like Toronto or Vancouver, and they're like, oh, one of my goals is to own a house in X number of years. And I say, great, go pick out the house that you want. If you could buy a house today, go look it up online, show it to me, and we can start crunching some numbers. And then something will happen, like oftentimes something will happen where they either don't do the exercise, they delay a lot, and we get to the bottom of why they're doing it, and they realize that it isn't actually what was really important to them. Like, they wanted a house because they wanted to connect with their friends, but they can find other ways to do that. Or they wanted a house because they wanted a space of their own, but they can find another way to do that. And maybe at the end of the day, they do want the house, and we work towards it. But I think it's more important to figure out what do they really want in life, and how can they get there in a direct fashion that might be more direct than what they're actually doing.
You've made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession. This episode is brought to you by Clothes for Chiro, Dr. Barbara Eaton's 56-day chiropractic boot camp, Dr. Alok Trivedi, the Black Diamond Club, Element Mattresses, Legacy Wealth Management, Posture Screen, MedZone, Vantage Point Marketing, Movo University, the Universal Tractioning System, Imaging Services, and Zingit Solutions. Let's hustle.
Yeah, you brought up some interesting things there, and one of the things that I've done to push myself into the stratosphere for being recognized as being successful is I detached myself from things. I don't own a vehicle. I don't own a house. I rent. We rent a condo. I don't have the responsibilities of upkeep of a household. I don't have the responsibilities of upkeep of maintenance on a vehicle. I think that people they lose themselves in I need this type of thing to have this type of life, when I think I have one of the best lives out there, and I've detached myself from television. I've detached myself from so many things, where I think that we live in a world where people, they get income and they kind of just let it go to places it doesn't need to go because they really don't have their pure life values down.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, is it linked to the highest value? Like just to give an example, the other day I went for a run. Like, I get up early and I work out, and I try to get home from working out by the time my kids are up. And I was kind of sitting on my back deck and thinking, I love this house. And we have a great house, but it's been a lot of headaches. Like, we've got this issue with our backyard that we're sinking all sorts of money into. We did a big a renovation. And so I sat there and I was like, man, I love this house. And then I thought, do I really love this house? Because I looked at sitting on the back deck and I look at a board and I'm like, do I love this board? The brick on my house, do I love this brick? I'm like, no, I don't love this board. I don't love this brick. So I technically don't love this wall. I don't love this roof. What do I really love? Well, I love my family. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love the fact that people come to my house, that I hang out with them. And so really, if push came shove, the house is one of the smaller manifestations of this value I have of family and connection and friends. And I could certainly have all those things without having to live in a house as big, or without having to live in a house as nice. And so it really hit me when I took the time to do that exercise. Another one I did was when my clients get to a certain point, I really like to do, my first meeting with my client, with someone who's a prospective client, I'm gauging to see if they're willing to embrace a values-based planning. Because if someone comes to me and they say, I want X% in the market, and I say, okay, well, why is that important to you? And they say, well, I don't want to talk about that. I just want X%. And if they keep saying that, then I say, well, we can't work together. I need to know how you're going to measure success in a way that's going to impact your life. Because I've seen people if they're chasing something now, they're going to chase it forever. And so in my own life, so I visualized, I thought, in X number of years, I'll have the money I need to retire, to have the freedom to slow down and retire if I want to. And, I was sitting there, I was thinking, it's probably 25 years. And so I'm visualizing this, 25 years older. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, my kids are 25 years older. My parents are 25 years older. I'm not biking with my mom anymore, probably by the time she's in her, 90s. My kids are all grown up and out of the house. And so it was really interesting for me to visualize that at first, thinking, it feels so good to have the money I've always wanted to retire. But then it's almost like that movie Adam Sandler. There was a movie where he had a magical remote where he could fast forward his life, but at one point he kind of wakes up and he's fast forwarded too much, and he's missed out on anything. And so I kind of came out of that exercise and I thought, man, I really need to appreciate what I have now. And so I called my mom. I was like, Mom, when are we going to see each other again? Because she actually lives in Colorado near you. So I see her once or twice a year. My dad's in New York City. He's not as far. Called him up. I was like, Dad, when are you coming up next? Mom, when am I going to see you again? Because it just kind of hit me yes, as important as that future goal is, there's a lot of stuff in my life now that I really can embrace and and work on and be content about.
Yeah, a lot of those things are humanistic. And I think as we think of work and retirement, which I think retirement, the word is a kiss of death. I think that when people think about retirement, sometimes they chase the proverbial carrot in front of them to that point. And then, what is life once you stop doing what you've been loving doing for the past 40 years? There's only so much you can do by reading books and sitting on a beach and drinking expensive tropical drinks. I mean, I don't know what people think of a retirement, but I hope that everybody out there that's listening to this wants to work into old age because they love what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say retirement, it's kind of funny. I could have started with a caveat that when I do say retirement, and the vision of retirement, of someone retiring and then playing golf for the rest of their life. I don't know. I don't have a single client who that's their vision. And I don't, most people say, you know what, if I had the freedom, I would volunteer a little bit more. If I had the freedom, I would maybe, take up a different hobby, but and it's funny because sometimes people will say, like, I've had a few clients, I sit there and I'm like, what does retirement look like for you? I just want to sit and watch TV. And I say, well, I'll talk to these people and it's like, someone who's running a super busy practice and on the weekends, they're like the most busy people I've ever met. And I say, do you think you're magically going to stop wanting to be busy just because you're older? Like, I don't think that's going to change. And so in this particular situation, the reason, when we got to the bottom of it, the reason they said, I'm going to sit around all day is because for them that was a sign of success. Like, they were like, oh, well, someone who has the luxury of sitting around, that means they're successful in retirement. And I said, but is that really what you're going to want to do? He's like, no, like, this is someone who goes to Haiti to do free, work on people who can't afford, medical care, things like that. And I was like, you're not going to stop wanting to do that in retirement. And so really when I say, like, having enough money to have the choice, most people, they want to, if they really think about it and if they're really honest with themselves, like, they usually want to stay active. And maybe the way they're being active will change. But like I said, one of the biggest fears that I hear fairly consistently from my clients is, I don't want to be working when I'm 70 because I have to. Like, if I have the choice to slow down and want to, that's good. If I don't have the choice and I'm forced to keep up just because I'm forced to, like, they don't like the idea of that.
So let's talk about marketing strategies for a little bit. How do you use media, traditional or social, to market your brand to your community?
Yeah, that's an interesting time to be asking that question. So one thing, okay, so about a year ago, so I used to have an office here in Belleville. My company had an office, and then they decided to consolidate with another town that's about 45 minutes away. And so at that time, I had to make a decision. Do I open my own office? Do I start taking on all that overhead? Or do I find a way to get around it? And so I was freaking out at first, but then I said, you know what? I'm going to try to go as digital as online as possible. But one of the things I wasn't sure of was, will I be able to build a rapport and a relationship with people without meeting them? Like, my business is very much a, coffee, handshake, that sort of thing business. And I thought, can I take it online? And so a year ago, I decided to, all right, I'm going to start looking at the tools and processes that I need to go online. So from a very simple standpoint, like, I use Calendly for booking. People can go to my website and book an appointment with me. I use Zoom to have calls with people. I use share screen. I use the whiteboard. Then I use intake forms so I can collect initial information on people who are applying to work with me. And I've set up all those systems, but the next step for me is to take the marketing piece more digital, because most of the people that have gone into that funnel or that process have been people that I've met, people that I've been introduced to. But it's been cool. Like, I got licensed in British Columbia, which is all the way across the country, because I had people there that wanted to work with me, which is really quite unheard of in my profession. Like, there's very few advisors that do purely or can have a client that's purely digital. And so I have clients out in British Columbia. They're friends of friends. I've never actually met them. So the answer was, I can build a business. I can build relationships online. Now, when it comes to the marketing side, I've really spent a lot of time in the last 6-7 months learning specifically about Clickfunnels, like funnels. And because Russell Brunson has some really amazing books that are about how to communicate your message, how to talk to people in a way that they're going to understand and relate to your story. So I've been really working on that a lot, and it's really coincidental because about 6-7 months ago, I was reading about the hero's journey, and I was really thinking, man, if I could take this hero's journey and apply it to my world, it would be really impactful. And then I kind of asked around, and people said, well, I don't really know if anyone's doing that. And then sure enough, I went to a client's house, and he had .com secrets on his shelf and expert secrets on his shelf. And I said, oh, have you read, like, how are those books? And he's like, I was like, can you lend them to me? He's like, I'd lend them to you, but you're going to keep them. So you have to go buy them. And so I bought them, and I started reading them. So and I'm still, like, I'm definitely ahead of most advisors in that space, but I'm still, like, getting to the real nitty gritty around how am I going to feed my funnel. And so the other thing I'm also working on is, building a really solid referral network from allied professionals. So a concept from Book Yourself Solid, which is this like the Center of Influence Mastermind, and then also the Dream 100, which is from Russell Brunson, or at least he's the one that I heard it from.
Yeah, all that stuff's pretty fantastic. I think being up with technology is something that we should definitely do. So let's talk tech for a second. What technology do you do besides Clickfunnels to keep you engaged with your audiences?
Yeah, so to stay engaged, I have a business Facebook page. I have a private Facebook group that is only for people who have been through my first meeting, who have like kind of qualified for that space. Because a while back, when I run across something interesting, I used to kind of text it to one person or email it to one person, which I still do. But now I'm much more likely to put it on either my business page or inside the private Facebook page. And what I've learned, like when I started my I joined the business 5 years ago, and I needed to get a professional Facebook page, and I would spend like hours writing highly technical articles about the difference between this account and that account, or the difference in savings rates and all that. And a friend of mine who's in marketing said, Galen, no one wants to read that. Like, no one wants to read that highly technical stuff. I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is like really cool, and like my teaching background, I'm educating people, and yeah. And she's like, no one's going to read that. I was like, what do I write about? And so, Russell Brunson, another thing I learned from him was like, just share stories from your life and tie them into your business. And so, some of the posts that I've had recently that are the most engaging are where I'm just kind of talking about something I'm dealing with in my life and how I'm tackling it using some of the tools I use with my clients or using some of the tools I've learned over the last year. And those are the ones that really get a lot of engagement. And they're a lot of fun to write. And another reason I like writing them is because I'm building a bit of a journal that my kids can grow up and read. There was no social media when my dad was, in his 30s and building his practice. So I would have liked to know kind of the things he was tackling. And then that's one of the reasons I keep it up, is because I think, I'm going to write this post about what I'm dealing with, partially for my audience, but also partially for my kids to have that kind of like a journal to read kind of about what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, that's cool. Some of the information you're sharing with us, there's so many takeaways, and I think that you've definitely delivered a lot of content and information for people that will want to work with you in the future. So I really appreciate you opening up so much and, being transparent with some of your strategies for taxes, telling a little bit about where you came from and why you support chiropractic as great as that you do. And, maybe, I don't know, just off the record, but on the record, maybe it's something you want to do as a strategy to market with us is become a sponsor.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that.
But yeah, I think that you have a lot of congruencies, and I think that, like you said, there's one person out there for how many people, but there's so many people out there that don't know where to get the information. And one of the things I like to say about chiropractic, the reason most people don't utilize chiropractic services is because they don't know where to go or who to trust. And when you start doing those think tank referral groups, you start seeing where some of the clients are coming from, and you're like, wow, I need to hang out there more.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because from a holistic standpoint, like I've little by little been looking at who to bring into the fold in my Center of Influence Mastermind, and that makes a lot of sense. And the trust thing, it's really funny because sometimes I'll forget that, so my title is Financial Security Advisor, and I remember I told some good friends I was thinking about becoming a financial advisor, and I remember literally one person, I was telling these two friends of mine, I was looking at one of them, and one of them was in the corner of my eye, and I just saw her shaking her head, and I was like, why are you shaking your head? And she's like, are you going to turn into like a sleazy salesman and all this stuff? And I'm like, you think I'm going to turn into someone else when I take on this job? Like, I'm still me. And so, but that was tough, to hear a good friend, kind of doubt, can Galen, stay trustworthy? And I remember it clear as day, I had to get some references to become an advisor, and I hadn't worked in Canada until that point. We'd been here for 2 years. I'd been a stay-at-home dad for a couple of years, and I was like, all right, it's time for me to get back into the workforce. And so to get my references, I called two of the people, my old principal that hired me, that gave me my first teaching job, and the lady who ran, the woman who ran the master's program where I got my master's. And I was really hesitant to call them because I thought the first thing they'd say is, Galen, you're giving up. You're giving up on teaching. You're giving up on your calling. I didn't think, I was like, oh man, how are they going to take this that I'm switching? Both of them said, Galen, I think you're going to be really good at this job. And I was like, and I just finished my master's. Like, I literally just finished my master's. Well, I finished my master's, and then a year and a half later, I became an advisor. And so I was like, she's surely going to say, like, why the heck did you finish your master's in education, and now you're going to become an advisor? Like, what are you thinking? They both said, you're going to be really good at this. And that was really cool. Like, I really think back on that because, and so what I forget is that I slap the name financial security advisor, and there's almost an automatic mistrust. Like, can I trust this guy? Like, there's a lot of, like, and this is, I feel similar to your world, is there's a lot of things out there trying to discredit the work that I do. Like, there's a lot of noise out there that has people looking at the wrong things. Like I said, there's studies that show that the behavior of the individual is the number one consistent common thing that leads people to success. And it's a lot easier to blame the markets, the advisors, the fees. Like, it's a lot easier to blame other things rather than say, oh, like you said, like the whole decluttering of your life. Like, that's a behavior, a decision you made that's going to impact your finances hugely positively. And it's much easier to say, oh, I had a bad advisor, or advisors are in it for the money, they're not in it for me, because then I don't have to look at myself and wonder whether I'm making smart decisions or not. And there's plenty of people out there that are fueling this fire because it's very easy to do. It's very easy to pick on advisors. And the sad thing is that people that could be reaching out and finding someone, a trusted person that can help them navigate all these decisions, they're just not doing it. And partially, like you said, they're just not finding the right person. And that's a big part of the whole marketing piece that I never thought of before, is building the relationship. Like, I have friends who introduce me to other people. Like, if people say, oh, you should go talk to Galen. And I say to them, I'm like, you've got to say it in a specific way, because they're not going to come talk to me. Like, of course they're going to talk to you. You're great. And I'm like, well, they've never met me. Like, they have no idea who I am. Like, I could be anyone. And they're just going to jump up and come to me and tell me all their biggest financial problems and worries and concerns. Like, it's not going to happen. And so I'm working more and more on that, of the building. Like, I think that's where the marketing can play a huge role, is someone comes on their website, they see a video, they're instantly starting to see, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, he seems to be, easy to talk to, and little by little, building that relationship with you, which used to have to happen in person, but can be sped up a lot by the whole online thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
So what kind of things do you like to listen to and read? Are you in the middle of any books right now?
I just finished a book yesterday, so I've read about, I was counting it the other day. I made a big shift in my life about a year ago, where I joined Nima Rahmani's overview group, and he was telling me, one of the things he said was read Miracle Morning. So one of the books I recommend the most to people is Miracle Morning. So Miracle Morning is really big about setting your day up the night before, waking up with purpose, like really going through certain rituals to get your day going. So that's like a must-have as far as I'm concerned. Totally changed my life. Like, I don't always tell people this because I think I'm kind of crazy, but I get up at 5:20 every day. Even on the weekends, I get up at 5:20. I used to get up at 5:30, but the extra 10 minutes made a big difference. So I get up at 5:20. I've got my workouts done by 7. I can, if I work hard, like today, I finished 4 hours of work by 10:30 a.m., which was awesome because I wanted to take the afternoon off. So a book I just finished was Pitch Anything, which was recommended to me by someone in marketing. And so here's the thing, and I think this is very widely applicable. So I oftentimes will sit in front of someone, and they will be doing something that doesn't make sense. And I can show them with numbers why it doesn't make sense. Like why 10 years from now they're going to regret what they're doing. And I will show them this, like option A, option B. And I'm pretty good at using analogies and stories and stuff like that, but sometimes I do fall into the trap of like numbers. And I'll see people look at these numbers, and they'll look at me, and they will just keep doing what they're doing. And it's almost like they can't explain to me why they're going to keep doing what they're doing. It's almost like they're apologetic. Like, Galen, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I know it doesn't make sense, but I'm just going to do it. And I used to think, like, man, like, there's something wrong with these people. Like, they're just not the right kind of client. But now I'm really looking at, thanks to Pitch Anything, the book, I'm looking at how am I communicating with people. And one of the big concepts from that book that I'm really loving is that there's different frames or different ways of looking at things that we can apply in a situation. Like, just as an example, he talks about the analytic frame will almost always, like if I pull out numbers and try to prove something through numbers, it will almost always trigger a defensive response from someone because it's appealing to the higher thinking whereas I need to be appealing to the lower thinking, like the more primal thinking, which is more engaged with morals, more engaged with stories or intrigue. And so, anyways, I love this book. I have to reread it. But yeah, in the last year, I've read about 23 books. As far as podcasts go, I really love John Lee Dumas' stuff, Entrepreneur on Fire, EO Fire. That's one of those podcasts that I just kind of go back to every once in a while and kind of scroll through to see what else I could be learning about. It's great for entrepreneurs, great for business owners, and his Freedom Journal and Mastery Journal are also excellent ways to set goals and stick to them.
Awesome. Well, this is the part of the show where we ask you for any websites or social media links that you want the listeners at home to have.
Yeah, for sure. So my main website is gnuttall.com. So that's GNUTTALL.com. There's a button on there. So like I said, I'm licensed in Ontario and in BC. There's two buttons on there. One is apply to work with me. One is schedule. One is supposed to be just for clients, but if anyone listening to this wants to talk to me, then they can click on the book a meeting and see if they're a good fit for my services. As far as social media goes, Galen Nuttall, Financial Security Advisor, is my Facebook business page. So you can find me on there. Those are the two main places.
Awesome. Well, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't ask you?
I think you guys did a great job of really covering it all. You guys, like, I loved the way you guys set up the podcast by sending me some information ahead of time and the conversation before the interview. So no, I think we've pretty much covered it all, I think.
Well, it touches our heart to be able to be recognized as a leader in this profession, sharing the greatest information that we can possibly find, and to share the secret from what people do, what makes them special in the marketplace. So we really appreciate you opening up a little bit and sharing some of the strategies and ideas that you possess that you could help people with.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad we could make it work.
All right, Galen, I want to thank you for being our guest today. I know it's probably been a lot of great information for everyone to learn out there.
Sure thing. Absolutely. No, thanks for having me.
All right. We'll catch you on the next one on the Facebook Live.
Perfect. Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right. Have a good day.
We'll see you, Galen.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.